Hello all. We are going to talk of how to analyze the QA section of the mocks that are appearing in these days, or hopefully you're appearing in these days, and how should you go about doing it. So before you start down, I want you to engage in a set of activities. List down all the problems with regards to analysis in a notebook, and they should be pointed problems. Don't write stuff like I don't understand anything, I can't do analysis, I can't make myself sit down for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, or whatever number of hours it takes you. If that is your problem, then you don't really need this video. You need somebody to. You don't need anybody. Cat is not for you. Then. That is the point. At the end of the video, see if all the concerns that you've written down in step one, they have been addressed. If they have been, wonderful. If they're not, then you can, if they have been addressed, get to work, do the analysis. If not, then in the comment section of this video, ask whatever questions you have, and then I will get around to answering them in a timely fashion. I'm saying timely fashion because I will try to answer them as quickly as possible, but sometimes the response time may be delayed in the interest of full disclosure. That is a that is a clarification I seek to give right off the top. So do all this and then get to the next part of the presentation. My agenda here is what is your expectation? You would have come up with your expectation previously. I will now state what my objectives are. See, analysis is the second step. The first step is how do you attempt in the section. So first I'll be talking of how should you be attempting the QA section in the mock, followed by a generic understanding of what analysis contains, and then finally how to do the QA section analysis in my opinion, and the future task checklist. What all should you be doing in the future? So these are the 5 things that I'm planning to cover in this video. Hopefully it is beneficial for you. So getting to the first part, expectation setting, my objectives. My objective is to show you the right way forward regarding analysis, to make you self-sufficient for analysis. This is the most critical thing. Understand, too often people fall into the trap of thinking analysis requires somebody else or uh, solutions, or that is incidental, but analysis requires you. You have to put in the effort, and you have to ensure that you learn the process so that you are able to replicate it as many times as you want in future. To showcase to you that there is no one size fits all strategy or analysis methodology, this should lead to a very logical question. If there is no one size fits all analysis methodology, then why does this video exist in the first place? Because I'm going to share with you the best practices that I have, or what I have seen work for several candidates. So if that resonates with you, maybe this is what you should do. If it doesn't resonate with you, I would recommend you reach out, expand your wings further, see what analysis strategy works for you best. I personally vouch for this strategy, but that may not be enough for you. So up to you, your choice. Again, too many people confuse analysis with improvement. If you analyze, you will improve. But if you analyze only, you will end up improving. That is not the case. Think of it this way: somebody who can do great analysis will identify the chinks in the armor, work upon them, and then see an improvement. Somebody who only identifies the weaknesses but does not work upon them will not improve. So there has to be a subsequent step of you practicing, you working on the weaknesses you identified for you to have an improvement. Additionally, a strategy without hard work is irrelevant. See, analysis would purely work for those people who have done the hard yards earlier. If you have not studied the basics, you have not studied the fundamentals, you don't understand AM greater than equal to GM greater than equal to HM, something as basic as this, and then you're taking a mock, you're attempting a question, and then you're not able to solve, and then you say analysis doesn't help me. You don't know the basics. If you don't even know the rules of chess, even if you had Gary Kasparov or Vishwanathan Anand teaching you, if you don't know how a bishop moves, how a rook moves, how a pawn moves, then no amount of strategy is going to help you. Strategy is something you get to after your basics are clear. The last thing, and this is something very unique to the quant section, usually Out of the three sections in DA, DILR, and quant section has the maximum incidence of careless errors, wherein you end up adding 3 plus 3 is 9 or end up multiplying 3 into 3 is 6. That usually happens because quant is the third section in the mock, and by the time the quant section starts, you're already mentally so fatigued that you want it to end, you want it to get over, and you want to go home. So how do you address that issue? Maybe that is also going to be addressed in this session. Let's see. We talked of the expectation setting. Those are the things I'm going to cover. First, let's talk of how to attempt the section and see what I mean by this. I attempt my questions in 3 rounds: round 1, round 2, round 3, and round 3. These are different. I'll tell you what difference. So if I read a question, I'm able to understand what is to be done, and I can solve it in within 1 minute, preferably without a pen. I would attempt it in round 1. If I see a question, I read it, I understand what needs to be done, but I estimate it would take me some time, or it requires me to write stuff down, calculate stuff. I know the process, but requires me to engage in calculation that I cannot do mentally. I would mark it for round 2. Then there is a question that I look at it, and then I realize, yes, I know the right way of solving it, but it will take me even greater than 3 minutes to solve it. I know how to do it, but the time commitment here is much higher. Then I would not attempt it, skipped but recorded. I'll tell you what these bracket things do. And then finally, there will be certain questions that when you read, you think of them as foreign language. This seems Latin. I don't understand a word of what the question is trying to convey. You have that. So in the CAT paper or mocks that you take, the questions that you end up attempting appear as green. The questions that you mark for review would appear as purple or violet, whatever color you choose to call it. So this is green, R1 is green, R2 is purple. For R3, what I do is I attempt the question randomly, and then I have a symbol like this there. It shows I have attempted this question and have also marked this for review. I have attempted this question and also marked this for review. And the questions which are skipped, they appear as red. So these 4 color combinations, 1, 2, 3, and 4, tell me which category every question falls into, and accordingly I move forward. Of course, I am careful. If the time that remains is limited, I would go ahead and remove the answer that I have marked in this random question. I would not let it be there. But I make sure these 4 different symbols that I can potentially have, I have made use of all 4 symbols in all 4 categories of questions. With regards to specific question attempting, insights wise, average reading time per question is 15 to 20 seconds. Focus on the word average. I'm not saying every question has to be read in 15 to 20 seconds, but some questions will require slightly longer amount of time to read. Some questions will take slightly lesser amount of time to read. That is okay. The average time of reading per question will be 15 to 20 seconds, and followed by the rating. The rating being R1 or R2 or R3 or R3, depending on this. Okay. Ratings are dynamic, they keep changing with passage of time. Don't be very rigid with regards to rating. Say if you think that a question is easy, you start solving it, it has taken you more than 1 minute and you are still clueless as to how to proceed further, then that question automatically becomes worthy of round 2, move on. You spending more and more time on a question is not going to open it up. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed this yourself so far, the questions that usually get solved in the first go itself, and questions which you get stuck at takes you a slight bit longer amount of time. So given that all questions are worth equal marks, just run away from a question that you're getting stuck at. The other flawed logic that people use is attempting a question because it is from my favorite topic. It is from time and work. I love time and work, so I will definitely solve it. That may not be the right strategy, because say if this is the most difficult question that they could potentially have given from time and work, and you're attempting this, and some other topic that you dislike, say functions, but the question that appears in the exam is a rather basic one, very simple one that you can do in much lesser time with much lesser effort. You're not attempting that because you hate that topic, and you're attempting this because you love that topic. This is the worst decision making that can take place. Please do not have biases created in your head. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know where you can gamble, but do not have biases. I will definitely attempt this topic and I will definitely not attempt this topic. Certainty is the enemy of knowledge, or in this case, marks. The next thing is an easy question and a difficult question carry equal marks is actually a combination of the previous 2 points. Just because the question is difficult, it will not afford you extra marks. If you can solve it within limited time, solve it, move on, nothing else. The next thing is spread of easy question is not known beforehand. What I mean to say here is make sure you've seen all questions. Don't end up doing, some people don't even get to the end of the test, as in their time gets over when they're solving the 25th, 26th, 27th question. That is a bad attempt. Maybe there were easy questions at the end. Some people try to cheat the system by saying, what I'll do is I'll start at the end because that is where they place the easy questions. It might just happen that easy questions are at the beginning. You don't know where the easy questions are placed. The spread is unknown to you. So make sure you've seen all questions. Next thing is ideally by the end of 25 to 30 minutes, I make it a point to be sure of that I have seen all questions. And so far I would have marked 10, 11 odd questions. Although I have been extremely strict with myself, I don't take 25 to 30 minutes, but this is a reasonable target to have. Understand, in the first round I'm only attempting those questions that don't need me to use a pen. So marking 10, 11 odd questions in 25 to 30 minutes, wonderful, good enough. Next thing that I would be targeting is round 2 questions, which I would have marked for review. So returning to them, I know which ones are purple, this specific color. So this is purple. I'll go back to those questions and try solving them. Length of a question has no bearing on its difficulty level just because a question, and this is a very irritating insight that I've heard from candidates and sadly from some mentors as well. If a question is long, it should be attempted in round 2. If a question is small, it should be attempted in round 1. That is so nonsensical. You can have the most difficult question given to you in one single line and the easiest of questions given to you in 5 lines. Do not judge a question. So you read through a question. If you are able, it clicks you immediately what to do, then attempt it. If it doesn't click, then don't do it. That should be your only judgment making parameter, not the length of the question. The next thing you should take care of is make sure you work neatly. What I mean by that is, say you started solving a question, you reached a point where you feel you've gotten stuck, go to some other questions, solve them. When you come back to this question, your initial work should be legible enough, at least for you, so that you're able to continue the work from there. You don't have to start off at 11C. Additionally, there is a lot of emotional spillover from one section to the other. If your English hasn't gone well, then your DLR suffers. If your DLR hasn't gone well, your QA suffers. And that is a behavioral change you would have to try to effect. Stop letting the previous section impact the next one. In the sense, something that I choose to do personally, at the end of every section, last 30 seconds, I don't solve any questions. I simply sit down and think, okay, the next section is about to start. I have to be ready for that. I try to freshen my mind up in 30 seconds so that when the next section starts, I'm raring to go. I'm not carrying the hangover of the last section. Next thing you should be taking care of is never walk in with the target of attempting these many questions for this much percentile, these many questions to get a call, because the difficulty level of tests vary. Say in 2018, if you had solved 18 quant questions correctly, you would be 99 plus. If you were in 2017, CAT, I'm talking about the CAT paper, in 2017, you would have needed to solve 25 questions. And that is where 2018 aspirants found it very difficult. 2017 quant was extremely easy. So people had walked in with the expectation in 2018 that at least 25 questions I will attempt. But the quant section turned out to be relatively tough. Because of which people got panicked. They were not able to attempt the right number of questions, and in the end started gambling. Said, when say somebody had reached 17 questions, which would have been, if you had all 17 right, you would have gotten 99. But say somebody had reached 17 questions, but then thought, oh, this is not sufficient number of attempts, and they went on and they attempted 10 random more questions. And because of the negatives in the random more questions that they attempted, they ended up getting a percentile which is not the right way. Try to maximize the score that you get in a section. You are not supposed to solve all, you are not supposed to solve a predetermined number of questions. That is a very, very risky route to take. Next thing is the beautiful dichotomy in the quant section. See, people want you to solve maths fast, or people want to solve QA questions very quickly, and that is a beautiful target to have. But understand, you have to be fast and slow at the same time. When I say fast, this is about decision making. Whether you are attempting the question, whether you are not attempting the question, whether you are leaving it for round 2, whether you are leaving it, you think it will take you a lot of time. That decision making about a question has to be fast. The actual solving has to be slow. This is one of the facets that leads to careless errors. Because people want to be fast, because people want to do it very, very quickly, they end up making careless errors. Please be fast and slow. Fast about deciding whether you have to attempt or not, and slow about solving. Read every instruction given, read everything. Also, of course, when I mean slow, I don't mean you have to spend 5 minutes on a question, but take sufficient time so that no critical point misses out and you are able to interpret the question in its entirety and correctly. Of course, these are my timelines. You can edit them. This may not necessarily resonate with you. This may not necessarily be applicable to you. But this has worked wonderfully well for me over the years. And it has worked wonderfully well for several other people that I have taught. So if you are still looking for your perfect strategy, maybe this can work for you. Try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I wish you all the best for looking for a new one. That takes care of the attempt approach. Let's get to a more generic understanding of what analysis should entail. Analysis is supposed to be a bird's eye view of what went well, what went wrong, and how to identify what areas to focus on in the upcoming weeks. Analysis is not, oh, I'm so bad at this, I'm so bad at that, I made a mistake there, I made a mistake there. Turn that into a positive statement. These are the areas I need to work on. These are the things that I have to practice more on. Analysis is about the future work that you have to take care of. Identification based on historical data, what future work you have to engage on, that is analysis. Additionally, see, a lot of people take a lot of mock tests because they've heard from other people mock tests are critical. If you don't take mock tests, scoring well in CAT is not possible. And empirically speaking, that is true. Most high percentiles, not all, but most high percentilers take a sizable number of mocks before their exam. And because it is empirically true, let's assume it is true. But what people fail to hear, and most top percentilers will also tell you this, take the test and also analyze. A lot of people simply take the test without analysis, without making sure what you are learning from the test, which is extremely, extremely disappointing. Think of it this way: if you had fever and you put a thermometer in your mouth and you got to know your temperature, but you did not take any of the medicines, you did not take any of the bed rest advice by the doctor, and a few days later you put the thermometer in your mouth again, the fever is not going away. The fever will still stay there. The mock score or the mock performance is simply an indicator of your temperature. Analysis is the work you put in to improve your overall health. The next thing that is important is a good analysis will take different amounts of time for different people. Some people may be further along the preparation cycle. Some people are doing it for the second year, third year, fourth year, and some people will be doing it for their first year. So it is not about years. Some people might have started preparation way back last year. Some people might have started the preparation this year in June. So different people at different proficiency levels will take different amounts of time for the analysis. Do not compare yourself to other people. Say, I can complete my analysis in 2 hours and somebody else can complete their analysis in 40 minutes. Brilliant. And somebody else takes 6 hours. All of us need different amounts of time because we are all starting off at a different plane. It is not identical. Think of it this way: we all want people to treat us uniquely, But when it comes to doing the work, we want a one size fits all strategy. Doesn't work, because you are a unique individual. You have your own different pace at which you learn things that you have done. So you have to ensure that the way you do your analysis is suitable for you. The next thing is emotional analysis. Do not mix well. When analyzing a mock, you have to leave behind all preconceived ideas of what easy topics are and what tough topics are, and treat them like equals for the sake of learning, regardless of what question, what area the question comes from. Attempt all questions. You have to attempt all questions. If you say this question is from logarithms and I don't like it, logarithms is my Achilles heel, that is not the right way. Attempt all questions and attempt them appropriately. Don't just say, okay, I will attempt. You write down the question in a notebook, then you look at your phone for 2 minutes and then say, yes, I have attempted this question. Give it the proper respect, give it the effort required. You'll see improvement over time. An analysis delayed is an analysis missed. As soon as you possibly can, do your analysis. The longer you delay your analysis, most likely you will start forgetting what went through your head at the time of solving. And if you don't remember what through your head at the time of solving, the likelihood of you being able to learn from the mistakes you made or the good things that you did during the test, they diminish. So as soon as possible, the analysis has to take place as soon as possible. So in 4 words, analysis is historical, the activities that you've done in the past. It is unique, different for everyone. Bias free, you should not have any preconceived notion. And non-skippable, you have to do it every time you take a test. Only then will you see improvement. That was about analysis. Let's get to the QA section analysis. How should you do it? And the key disclaimer thing, this is my opinion, may not necessarily be valid for all. The first step you should do right after the test, prepare a table like this. You have your question number, you have the rating that you had given to the question at the time of the test, easy, medium, or difficult. Understand, easy, medium, difficult is different rating from round 1, round 2, round 3, because round 1, round 2, round 3 also includes the added parameter of time taken. So just because a question takes me more than 1 minute does not mean it is not easy. So at the time of the test, did I think the question was easy or medium or difficult or whatever? Go ahead, allocate the test time rating. Did I attempt it or not? Yes or no? Simple enough. Also try to identify, in your estimation, what was the question, what topic was the question from. It could be arithmetic, SICI, algebra, APGP, numbers, PNC, geometry, arithmetic, whatever topic you identified, to the depth possible, to the pointed end that you can. Even if you end up making only 5 categories, arithmetic, algebra, numbers, PNC, and geometry, even if you end up making 5 categories, that is okay. But if you can narrow it down further to subtopics, the greater the degree of granularity, better for you. And then finally, whether you got it correct or incorrect. If you did not attempt, then of course nothing. Make a table like this. Everyone, also, please do not get the rating of the question as easy or medium or difficult based upon the official test's rating of the question. What is easy for me may not be easy for you. What is difficult for me may not be difficult for you. The rating of every question is different for different people. Make your own list of easy, medium, difficult. Do not go by the rating given in the test. And you have to do this right after the test. In case you're doing it for a proctored mock or a timed mock in which the result comes after a window, do this as soon as the analysis is available. The next step would be reattempt all incorrect and missed questions. And for every question, invest at least 20 minutes before peeking at the solution. Why do I want you to waste 20 minutes on one particular measly QA question? With QA, DILR, DARC, any topic in this world, any subject in this world, you only get proficient at that subject once you have done it yourself. Unless you do it yourself, you are never ever going to learn the topic. Something that happens with a lot of candidates who are attending classes usually. You are given sheets, you are given home sheets, and you are given assignments. You try solving that assignment, you don't get to solve a question. Then you look at the solution that is available with you, and then you say, oh, this is what was required to be done. And then you get a false sense of security that yes, I solved that question. You haven't. Somebody else gave you the way to solve it. You can solve that precise question in future, but any adjustment in that, even if you change the names or some numbers in that, you will again get stuck. So what I want you to do is struggle with a question, spend time with a question, approach it from different possible ways. If you think there will be multiple cases made, make those multiple cases. If you feel there will be lots of calculation involved, lots of multiplication, you would have to go into decimals, you will have to calculate power 5, do all of that. Because once you do all of that, and then when you learn the right way to do it, you will appreciate it more and it will stay with you. Once it has been painful, it will stay with you. If it has not been painful, you'll go, oh, very nice. That is how it should have done. You would appreciate the solution, you would have never assimilated it. Okay, that was the 20-minute bit. Why I'm saying peeking at the solution, not looking at it. A lot of times, for a lot of questions or problems that candidates faces, it is not that they don't know how to solve the question. It is just that they don't know what the first step should be. So, what you should do is look at the solution, read the first few lines, then close the solution. After you have read those first few lines, invest 10 more minutes to solve individually. If now you can solve, if you can now solve, wonderful. If you can still not solve, then go ahead, open the solution, watch it, not a problem. What this does is opens up the gate to knowing whether you are missing triggers. Triggers are basically the first steps that you have to take at the time of solving a QA question or any question for that matter. Okay, if I read this, what should come to my head? If I read this, what should come to my head? Say an example of a simple trigger is in a triangle where the three sides are in AP and GP, blah, 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 whatever happens. But as soon as you read this first line, you should get this trigger in your head. The only triangle where the three sides are in AP and also in GP is an equilateral triangle. No other triangle has this property. So this trigger identification, this trigger knowledge is something that you have to build over time. If these triggers are missing, what steps should you take? You'll get to know. You've attempted your missed questions and incorrect questions. Now you'll have three categories of questions: correct, incorrect, and unattempted. For the correct questions, a lot of people don't go through the solutions for the correct questions because they got it correct, so they're happy. I would recommend still go through the solutions, engage in something known as efficiency check, and I understand the incidence of efficiency check working out is very, very low. What I mean by efficiency check is you look at the official solution and see whose way was better. Was it yours or was it the official solutions, or were they equal? If they were equal, great. If your way was better, then pat yourself on the back. If your way was bad and the official solution is better, then that is something for you to learn. You can record that somewhere in your notebook. Now for the incorrect and the unattempted questions, there could be two kinds of errors, either a concept error or a careless error. Careless error being the ones that we mentioned earlier, 3 into 3 is 9, and 3 into 3 is 6 and 3 plus 3 is 9. If you made a careless error in solving of a quant question, slap yourself and move on. Nobody can help you with a careless error. Nobody can help you with a careless error. It is more a behavioral thing that you have to take care of. If it is a concept error, if it is not a careless error, by default it is a concept error. It can be further classified into two things. Either it's a knowledge issue or an application issue. How do you identify whether it's a knowledge issue or an application issue is? See, remember we were peeking at the solution and still not able to solve it, blah, blah. When you look at the solution, and when you peeked at the trigger and you're able to solve it, then it is case C. The trigger was missing. If you looked at the solution and you understood it in one way, then it means practice is missing. If you looked at the solution and you're still unable to comprehend what the solution is, then it will have two outcomes. Either the topic is yet to be done, and when I mean topic is yet to be done, I mean done in class and by you individually, or the topic is done in class and done by you, both these cases. If the topic is done and you still cannot understand, if you still cannot understand the solution, then that is case B. If the topic is yet to be done, then that is case A. Remember these four things. You look at a solution, you don't understand, topic is not yet done A, topic is done B. You look at the initial portion and you are able to solve the remainder of the steps, then trigger is missing. You look at the solution and in the first go you understand the entire solution, then practice is missing. These are the four outcomes. Remember these four outcomes, they will be used in future. The next step would be, remember we had created a table like this in task 1. Create the same table again. This was test time rating. Here, change the post test rating. Now, you would know how strong your judgment about questions is. Whether you are able to identify whether it's an easy question or a medium question or a difficult question, how accurately you are able to do that. Sometimes you would also see that the topic itself would change. You were thinking in our initial analysis, I had reached a conclusion that question 6 was a arithmetic question, but when I started looking at it appropriately, when I saw it, when I invested more time in it, I realized it is a numbers question. And what has also happened, if you noticed, previously, because it was an arithmetic question, in my understanding, it was a medium question, but I looked at it from the numbers perspective, it became a tremendously easy question. So things will keep on evolving. Once you go through multiple tests, at least 6 tests, in my estimation, at least 6 tests, you will start to see patterns emerging. Patterns of what you usually get wrong, what you usually get right, what area you attempt very little from but have high accuracy in, what area you attempt very freely from but don't have that level of accuracy. So you would start seeing trend analysis from this step, and that will enable you to identify whether you need to work on something. As of now, don't quit on areas, don't go PNC is too difficult, I will not practice PNC at all. There are people who are, again, people and mentors and so many people in this world, they are simply claiming PNC is not important. There are only 3 questions in the quant section. Even if you want to do PNC, it is okay. Completely forgetting the fact that all the PNC questions that come are extremely basic PNC questions. PNC is one of those special areas where people are learning about multinomial distribution, something that I've heard of and proud to admit that I recently learned, but it is completely irrelevant for CAT. They are giving you basic distributions, small numbers, small things to solve. People are not looking at that. 3-4 PNC questions that come in CAT, they are freebies. They are extremely easy questions, and it would be completely against your interest to skip those questions and not prepare for those questions. If you do them, you have a guaranteed 10-12 marks stored away in your kitty. Do not skip PNC as a topic. In the same line, do not skip log. Logs historically have been nice in the sense at the beginning of the season people hate logs, but during the course of the season they realize logs are easy and they start attempting it. Making this second table pre-test and during the test and post-test will help you identify which topics you're good at, which topics you're not good at, and what you need to do in future. Then comes the last step, your future work. Remember the A, B, C, D we had identified. If the topic is yet to be done, chill. Nothing can be done. You have no fundamentals, you have no knowledge of the topic, chill. If the topic is done, revise and revisit all the notes, the classes, the insights, everything that you've done. Go through it all. Make sure you understand that topic all over again. Because here, when I say topic done, topic has been done on a schedule. Topic has not been done in your head. And until it has been done in your head, the topic is not done. If the trigger is missing, that is a wonderful point. Record it in a repository where all insights, learnings will be present. Say, you would have, when you had attempted these quant mocks or whatever test you appeared for, every test will give you 2-3 some non-conventional questions or observational logic questions that don't fit into any category. They're just a trigger that you need to see. There is just something insightful that you have to see. Make a list of all that so that by the time CAT arrives, you have around 150, 160 triggers available with you, and you're able to break it down into key components every time. Say a trigger that I love sharing with people, and most people are aware of. If you're not, maybe you can use this. Whenever a number talks of sum of digits or digit sum or whatever form it comes in, they are talking of remainder with base minus 1. Now most people understand it as remainder with 9 because sum of digits 9 and 3 and blah blah. But that is because we are operating in base 10, and therefore that is the case with 9. Had we been operating in base 9, sum of digits would give you remainder with 8. Had we been operating in base 8, you would have gotten remainder with 7 with sum of digits. So the trigger for me, sum of digits, is remainder with base minus 1. That is my trigger in my head. You will come up with more such triggers. Over the years, the list of triggers that candidates prepare has been my own greatest source of learnings of things. So please make sure you do your repository filling and accumulating your triggers over a period of time. Of course, the last step, engage in a lot of practice. You have to solve questions. With regards to practice, I have an insight or suggestion to make. Please make sure when you're moving from one topic to the other, say you're doing number system and then you're moving on to algebra. If you're moving from one topic to the other, and now you're solving algebra. When you're solving algebra, do not forget number system. A lot of people have this problem. I solved number theory, I could solve questions. I moved on to algebra. Now somebody gave me a number system question. I can't solve it. I can't solve any number system questions. That happens because you left touch with the topic. What you should ideally do every day when you're practicing algebra, fine, pick up 10 random questions. Once you've solved, not solved, up to you. But pick up 10 random questions, attempt them first. If you can get 80% accuracy there, only then move on to algebra. And take basic questions. Don't take the toughest ones. Don't take mock questions. Take the basic, whatever source, whatever book or online website you're following. Take the basic question, solve the number system basics, then go to algebra, solve it. Don't lose touch with the topic. And say after this, if you were moving on to say geometry, so before solving geometry for the day, do the number system random questions 10, do the 10 random algebra questions. Unless you do that, you will start losing touch with the topics, and then your progress would mean that the past is getting erased, which is not a fun outcome. And this will be all. This is what I mean by analysis in the QA section. Again, the disclaimer, this is something that worked for me as a candidate. This is something that has worked for several people that I have taught. I will not make the claim it will definitely work for you. There are people who it has worked for. There are people who have done different things and different things have worked for them. Nobody has come back and said this is not working for me. Or if they have, there has most likely been some other reason. They don't take the time to solve it. See, I understand the step where most people will make a compromises. They will not invest the 20 minutes here. They will look at it for 2 minutes and then look at the solution directly. If you take cuts like that, then don't expect the outcome in line with your expectation. There will be a mismatch. Anyway, let's get to the last part of this presentation, the future task checklist. Please make sure you attempt mock in one sitting. Clean recording while solving the questions. We've done that. Self-analysis as soon as possible after the mock. Prepare a repository of good questions and ignore weird questions. This is also important. What I mean by weird questions, in some of the mock, there are certain questions that require you to calculate 1.12 raised to the power 5. That is a nonsense question, because 1.12 raised to the power 5 is not something CAT is ever going to give you, or any entrance exam is going to give you. That tests whether you are a calculator or not. Even if they give you a calculator, that tests whether you are good at math. This is not math. This is quantitative ability, the ability to reason with language. So they will not give you stuff like that. Okay. Next thing is, do not move on to the next mock until the analysis of the last one is done. Make small but slightly difficult targets. This is more behavioral in nature. Push yourself. Say if you have work and you can only spare 1 hour in a day, cut down on your sleeping time by half an hour. Study for 1.5 hours in a day. And once you start doing that as a matter of habit, you will see the improvement will come naturally. Reward yourself when targets are met and withhold reward when targets are not met. Okay, I made a spelling error. It should be targets here. Do not compare yourself to other, only to your past self. Do not look at other people's scores, especially for Pagal Guy Janta. On Pagalka, you usually, there is something called an observation bias. There are lots of people who post a lot of good scores, and then people get demoralized. People are scoring 80 and 85 and 89 and 82. That is wonderful. People are scoring very nice. You should be happy for them. Although human tendency is to look at the negatives first, make it a logical conclusion for yourself. It doesn't matter what the other person scores. What matters is what you score. So if you say, if you scored 50 in one test, and 50 is also too high, say if you scored 25 in the QA section in one test, and the second section you scored 29, it does not mean you did better. Scores do not matter. The next line is that simply see the errors that you made in this test. Have you repeated the same errors? The errors here and the errors here, if they are the same, your mock performance is bad. If the errors are not same, then your mock performance is good. See, over a period of time, if there are 15,000 different errors that you can make, by the time actual CAT comes, make 14,500 of them, so that the scope of you making an error in the actual CAT exam is minimized. Errors have to be minimized. Intrinsically, all of us are intelligent. All of us are smart. All of us, we know, if we've lived this long, we have figured out the way to life. We have figured out something reasonable to do. CAT marks don't define your life, but too often people want to become something they're not. Say somebody who is not doing very well in English, you have to maximize skill. But if you're doing very, very well in English, then you would have English, I mean BARC, not English, but then you would have to make comparable adjustments. Whatever your targets are, where do you want to end up, how much, what range of score would be required for that. You would have all those factors, but try and improve yourself from your past self instead of looking at other people's score. And finally, enjoy the ride. You will never get good at something that you don't enjoy. Think of the smallest. When you were little, you were playing cricket or whatever other games you were playing, cricket, football, basketball, tennis, carom, swimming, whatever. You were not good at it initially. In fact, for a very long part of your life, you were not good at it. Yet you kept doing it and then you got good at it. The problem is you enjoyed the process of improving in that particular sport at the time. When it comes to CAT, people want to be experts in one day, and that expectation leads to disappointment, dejection, and they end up not doing it. Forget everything else. Simply enjoy the ride, learn things. Don't think of CAT. See, CAT in its essence is an IQ test. If it's an IQ test, try to improve your IQ. If you end up scoring well in CAT, great. If you don't end up scoring well in CAT, at least you should be smarter at the end of this process than you were at the beginning. You getting an admission or you scoring very well should be an incidental outcome of you being smarter. You scoring high cannot be the target. If you understand what I mean. Okay, anyway, this takes care of the future task checklist. As asked earlier, feel free to post queries related to analysis methodology in the comment section, and I shall try to respond to them in a timely fashion. Anastasia Shankar signing off. Okay, bye.